Good evening. Time having arrived, it is now 6 p.m. I call this meeting of the Policy Subcommittee of the Brockton School Committee to order. So I do need to read the open meeting regulation here before we get started. Due to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic and state of emergency on March 12, 2020, Governor Baker issued an executive order temporarily suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, GL Chapter 30A, Section 20, pursuant to the order. Public bodies are temporarily relieved from the open meeting law's requirement that meetings be held in public places, open and physically accessible to the public, so long as measures are taken to ensure access to the body's deliberations through adequate alternative means. This meeting will be held and will be accessible to the public via Brockton Community Access, Brockton Public Schools website, www.bpsma.org, YouTube, and Comcast Channel 12. The public can access this meeting via this link, www.youtube.com/TheBrocktonChannels. All right. First order of business is a roll call vote to conduct this meeting under the revised open meeting law. Mayor Sullivan?
Yes.
All right. And then myself, Vice Chair, yes. Ms. Asak?
Yes.
Mrs. Mendez?
Yes.
Mr. Minicello?
Yes.
Mr. Rodriguez?
Yes.
AKA the birthday boy.
Thank you.
Mrs. Sullivan?
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan?
Yes.
And non-voting Superintendent Thomas?
Yes.
Okay, one down. And then we also need to do a roll call to establish a quorum. So I'll call the roll again, starting with the mayor, Mayor Sullivan,
Yes.
and the vice chair, myself, I'm here, yes. Ms. Asak?
Yes.
Mrs. Mendez?
Yes.
Mr. Minicello?
Yes.
Mr. Rodriguez?
Yes.
Mrs. Sullivan?
Yes.
And Mr. Sullivan?
Yes.
And the superintendent of schools, Superintendent Thomas, non-voting.
Yes.
All right. Very good. Now that we got the housekeeping out of the way, we do have several items on the agenda for the evening. I'll run through those quickly and then I'll turn the meeting over to the superintendent. We're going to, item number 1, selection of new graduation dates. Item 2, DESE modified competency determination requirements for class of 2020. Item 3 is the virtual kindergarten registration process. 4 is promotion and grade 6 placement. Item 5, tag for the 2020-2021 school year. And 6, any other business that needs to come before the policy subcommittee. And so, Mr. Superintendent, if you'd like to take over from there.
Yes, thank you, Mr. DiAugustino. So tonight I would like to discuss with the committee of selecting a new graduation date. Obviously, June, the current date in June, early June, I believe it's the 5th, is basically something I think obviously we need to postpone and move the date into July. So my recommended dates would be the weekend of July 25th and 26th. Right now we are planning and moving forward nicely with a virtual graduation. And that is obviously going to take a lot more planning than a physical graduation would. If by some chance, again, if we were able to switch to a modified physical small graduations, we could do that fairly quickly because we've done plenty of those. So a physical graduation plan would actually wouldn't take us a long time. But I feel that a later July date, whether it's, moving towards a virtual graduation, I still feel that a later July date would be safer, because, I think people will want to gather and either hold cookouts and celebrations for graduation. So I think the later we go into July, the better. And then I think it also gives us more time to make sure in this time and we'll go over that in item number 2 about the modified competency determination for graduation. It would give us more time to make sure that we put our appeals in for our seniors. It also would allow Dr. Cobbs to have his summer semester of Edison, which would then, usually that ends on July 16th. So I think a July 25th and 26th graduation dates, we could encompass all the high schools, Brockton High, the Huntington, Edison Academy, and the Key Center. And I just think the later in July would be the safest for all of us. And again, we're planning fully for a virtual ceremony. And then if by some chance and we were able to switch to smaller physical graduation, we could do that pretty quickly. We would need a lot of time to actually plan for that. So that's my recommendation to the committee.
All right. Any thoughts or questions, discussion on that plan? Mr. Minicello.
Hi there. So I definitely agree that the later graduation is better. You know how we were talking about, possibly doing some sort of a graduation where, limited involvement or limited exposure of students to each other.
Mhm.
Or the barbecue, we were talking about a barbecue. When I read the paper this week, I noticed that there were pictures of an 18-year-old's birthday party, and it looked like it was to be on the grounds of the Davis School. I'm not sure if it was the Davis School, but it looked like to me it was the Davis School parking lot. So if you look at the Enterprise, you'll see a whole host of like photographs of this 18th birthday party, and people getting together. Looking at that event, so to speak, just tells me that if we tried some sort of modified graduation where students are together, I do not feel that it will go well with respect to social distancing, just because. And if you have time, just take a look on the online pictures of this 18th birthday party, and there's a number of pictures, and you'll see all sorts of adults and kids, and some people have masks, not many people have masks. It's just, to me, when I looked at it, I'm like, I can see if we try something modified before we get the safe green light, I think it's going to end up being not a disaster, but just a problem or problematic. Like I think that event showed in the paper. Did anyone else see any of those pictures?
I didn't.
I'm sorry, I did not, Mr. Minicello.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll go to the
I will
Enterprise.
look. I will look.
Yeah, go to the Enterprise, and you'll see it's some kid's 18th birthday party, and the Enterprise has a whole host of pictures, and there's all sorts of adults, there's all sorts of kids, and it's everything that the governor is saying not to do, basically, and our mayor to be in also.
Yeah, so if I could just opine on that as well. 174 deaths. That's the count right now. 174 Brockton people have died. It went up from 168 to 174 today. We have 2,283 Brockton people dealing with positive active cases of coronavirus and 3,443 total numbers. So I share the sentiments of Mr. Minicello. I saw those pictures. It's concerning. It's frustrating. And I unfortunately, not trying to be a party pooper, but we have to err on the side of caution. I mean, we have a fiduciary duty to protect the citizens. And I agree with Tom. I don't think it will go well. So we have to, we really have to look at the data, not a date, as we move forward, honor and respect and love these kids and commend them for their accomplishments. But we also have to make sure that we do it in a safety way. So thank you for bringing that to everybody's attention, Mr. Minicello.
No problem.
So
You know, I think sometimes you have to be the adult in the room, and no one's going to really like that. But
Right.
under these circumstances, where some people, the virus is just sort of like a nasty flu or a nasty cold. Other people, it's death. So it's amazing. Even some there was a poor gentleman. I think he was a policeman. I forget where. He's on a ventilator right now, and he's not an old guy. So it's very odd how some people, it's like just a nasty flu, or it's just a nasty cold or what have you. They get over it in a couple of weeks. But other people, it's a death sentence, and you don't know who's who. You don't know which person's going to be affected one way or the other. So.
Can I just share a quick story, Mr. Vice Chairman?
Please do.
I received a letter today from a third grader at the Brockton Public Schools. I'm not going to tell you what school. And I was very, very concerned about the letter because it was well written. It was very grammatically correct, but it wasn't factually correct, because she said, Mr. Mayor, I should be able to play at the playgrounds, play with my friends. Only old people are getting this virus. Only old people are dying from this virus. This is a third grader, so I'm chalking that up to age, but she's being told that from somebody, right? Some adult. So it's just factually so inaccurate. And tomorrow I have a medical doctor joining as a consultant, a pandemic consultant. He was chief of ER at Brockton Hospital, chief of ER at Good Samaritan. His name is Dr. Rick Herman, and he's going to be joining to help me, because this is far from over. People think, oh, it's like what Mr. Minicello just said. Oh, it's a cold and only sick elderly people in nursing homes get it. It's not true. It's 174 people died. And I'll tell you, because I know it's not 174 people that were elderly living in nursing homes. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think the point's well taken. Everybody wants to get back to normal life and what have you, and wants to be through this. But again, doing things like this party that happened, isn't helping that. That's delaying any ability we might have to, it's just delaying things longer by not following the guidelines that we've been given. I do, agree that, I think that, a virtual graduation is the only thing that makes sense to plan at this time. Who knows? By the time we get there, maybe the data will be such that something else could be discussed. But at this point, the data we have right now suggests that the only thing we could really have any real conversations about is virtual, which is terrible. And I feel horrible for the kids. And, I'd love nothing more than to be able to give them the real, graduation ceremony that we have every year. They deserve it. They've done nothing to deserve to have this taken from them, but I just don't think it's realistic to really discuss anything more than virtual at this point in time.
And then just so I'm clear, everybody, that is actually what we're doing, is virtual. We have no plans for physical.
Right.
This weekend, we watched my son's girlfriend's UMass Amherst graduation virtually. And they actually did a nice job. They had, it started out with the chancellor in his own home, walking around in his full robe and garb, talking to the students and, apologizing for the situation, but, reminding them that, this is something that we all have to, go through, and this is unfortunate, but we're all going to be stronger for it. Then they had the speaker. They had the gentleman, a graduate of UMass Amherst, who was the founder of Life is Good. I think that was kind of appropriate. Life is Good. And he was speaking about, his formation of the company and having your goals and setting your goals and discipline and all that good stuff. And then they had, sort of guests just pop on. Bob Kraft showed up on virtually and was talking to the UMass grads for, 30 seconds. And then they had Devin McCourty showed up, and then another running back, his name escapes me. The governor, of course, they had Rachel Maddow. They had a whole number of, famous people, politicians, sports people. And then at the very end, what I really loved was that they had the screen popped to about like 50 little pictures. And it showed UMass Amherst band, like each kid in their own house, you know, with their instrument, with their UMass t-shirt or sweatshirt on, playing songs. I mean, we could actually have something like that, as long as we have kids that have iPads. We could have, some kids singing, band people. I mean, we could really do something, to liven it up a bit, with kids' involvement and guest speakers. And, perhaps we can, try to find, our good friend, Cedric. I mean, he knows all sorts of Boston people, in terms of athletes and people affiliated with the Red Sox. I mean, who knows? Or if we could perhaps get some stars to show up that day, and just sort of surprise people on Zoom, wishing the Brockton graduates, well, or that sort of stuff, So if we plan it right, we basically try to do something good, with a bad situation, but if we get creative. So that's my 2 cents worth.
Yeah, so basically that's exactly what we're planning is virtual. But I just wanted to nail down that date of the 25th and 26th, kind of make it like a graduation weekend. So we cover all of the high schools. And it gives us plenty of time to make sure that if we are waiting for any waivers from the state, that those seniors are able to graduate on that day. But also it gives us plenty of time to put things into place like Mr. Minicello just mentioned. And it also, again, it makes things more safer as we get later into July, because even with a virtual ceremony, as you know, people are going to get together after that ceremony to celebrate. So that's my recommendation, that obviously we're a full-fledged plan on a virtual graduation for the weekend of the 25th and 26th of July.
So
Do you need a motion? Do you need a motion, Mike?
Yeah, because it's actually a calendar. It is voted on by the school committee in the calendar, the date of graduation. So if we could take a vote, and I'm gonna get you the exact date of what we had. So basically graduation was on June 6th, it was scheduled to be. So we would be moving the June 6th ceremony to a virtual ceremony to July, and I would say the weekend of July 25th and 26th, because that would encompass not only Brockton High School, but the Edison, the Keith Center, which is the Champion, and the Fred.
I guess, do we need further discussion on it?
The Frederick Douglass, and also.
Is there any other comment from members of the committee before we call for a motion?
I
Mr.
just have a
Sullivan?
comment.
I'm sorry, Mr. Sullivan, then Mrs. Sullivan.
Yeah. Mike, what about the diplomas? How would those be?
They'll all be ordered. We'd obviously have a plan in place. Where they could, we would basically, depending on what the guidelines say, we'd have we could have some virtual, and then we could have like a drive-through ceremony, or depending what happens with the guidelines. So it's obviously the graduation has to be virtual, but as far as the pickup of we would get the diplomas. So when the students are actually, on BCA and ceremonies on BCA, they would have the diploma in hand. So we have, the diplomas are already ordered. We have those, we get those in, and then it gives us plenty of time if we're going with the July 25th, 26th to order more if we need them for other kids that, obviously earn their graduation, their diploma. So that wouldn't be a problem. It's just figuring out the logistics of how to get the diplomas to the students, safely at that time.
Okay, thank you.
But the diplomas would not be, we'd have plenty of diplomas in stock. We'd make sure they all get the proper.
All right, Mrs. Sullivan?
Okay, I just wanted to make a comment on
So that wouldn't be an issue.
the letter that the mayor received from the child that says it doesn't affect the kids. I don't know if, I'm sure people have seen, but there is some new mysterious illness some children in New York have come down with, and they don't know if that is attributed to the virus because they don't know enough about this virus to really tell, I think there was already 2 children that died.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to, it is serious. It does affect children in some way, their thinking. Thank you.
And, not to keep going on that, but, as I shared with the committee a few weeks back, I lost a friend of mine to COVID in New York, and he was 40. Now, maybe to this child, to this student, that might sound old, but that's not really old, 40.
No.
So it
Nope.
definitely is affecting, more than just elderly folks and folks in nursing homes for sure. All right. So do we, any further comment on the graduation date change?
Mark, I have a
Cynthia,
question.
yes.
Is the virtual platform, I only asked because at my school, the cost was about 6,500. Are we planning to pay for a platform where they virtually see themselves graduating, or are we thinking this is going to be all on Zoom? Can all students be a Zoom at the same time?
Well, we're actually working with BCA. So
Oof.
You cut off, Mike. a little.
Yeah, the superintendent's got a rough signal tonight.
everyone
They have
on
wires
BCA.
down in
Can you hear me?
Halifax?
Is it better? Is it better now?
There we go. There we
All
go.
right. Sorry, I might have been too far away. So we're actually planning the virtual ceremony with the Brockton cable access with Simmons. So I think that's the best case scenario, because that's going to be, it will be, basically for everybody in Brockton to see. That's a service that we work with Mike. I don't see that it being at any cost. There could be some cost for, we like to think Mr. Minicello said, there are people available to come on and, give some positive, quick messages to the students. So those are the kind of things that we'll work on. So Jess Hodges, Dr. Murray, Cindy Burns, the deans, Dr. Cobbs, and Jay Lanner are all working together, because obviously they all lead the high schools. And they're working to put this virtual ceremony together. And as we start to build it and get closer to something, obviously we'll have messages from school committee, the mayor, the speeches, and
But Mike, it sounds like
pretty much have that all ready to go.
will the graduations continue to be by building, or are we foreseeing it to be all buildings together in that one virtual?
In a virtual ceremony would be obviously with the academy, with each school has their particular student speaker, their principals get to give a speech. So it would be done by school. So Brockton High would be done as one school, and then Edison Academy, and then the Key Center, and then the Huntington School.
Okay, thank you. And then
But they would all have the full access to the Brockton cable.
And then for the diploma, it'll be a drive up where they'll physically drive up to get their diplomas.
That's what we have to wait and see what we'll see what the guidelines say. I'd like to have it virtually where, when the student is there, they're actually able to show their diploma. So we might have to get the diplomas to them. I mean, that could be a way to get them the diplomas on maybe like that Friday. If it's safe to have a drive up, they could pick the diploma up, and we could, take some pictures, and then when we do the virtual ceremony over the weekend, they'd already have their diploma in hand. So those are the kind of things we're planning now. So we're definitely, as we continue to plan this, now that we know we have dates, we would definitely circle back with the school committee. So you have your input. Jess and the high school principals and deans will come on and present what we plan on doing. And then if you want to make any modifications and talk about different fun things we can do, we can add those. So the good thing about this, we have over 2 months to plan now. So we can tweak and we can come back together and work on this. We'll come up with the plan. We can put a plan in place, and then we'll come back to the committee probably early June with a plan through BCA, and then we can work together to modify it to, again, everybody's ideas are welcome, so we can, make this as fun and as memorable as possible for our seniors.
Okay.
All right. Any other comments, questions?
I think we just have to make sure that every kid graduating has access to a computer for that day to be able to, partake and see themselves, or however we're going to do it,
Yeah, I mean, I think you do pre-recordings for the kids, so I think, we obviously could work that out. If a student doesn't have a computer, we would, have a safe place for them to come and be recorded. And, that's all the things we're thinking of, every different scenario, to make sure that every student that's receiving a diploma that wants to be will be on camera.
Right. But I mean, when we want to make sure that they can watch the ceremony.
Oh, that's why, Tom, the important is that's why it's got to be on cable access.
But you only have cable access if you have cable.
Yeah, but then we'd also be streaming it through the computer as well.
Okay. I mean, as long as they all have access to a computer.
Yep.
Okay.
Well, it would be either through
one or the other.
It'd be the computer or through the TV.
Yeah. I mean, they have to have one or the other. I mean, if they don't have cable, they can't watch it. And if they obviously don't have a computer or tablet, they can't watch it. So.
Right. Well, I mean, and I suppose in theory you could watch it on a cell phone. It'd be awfully small, but you could do it, So, okay. All right. Do we want to go ahead with a motion to change the graduation date?
I'll make a motion to change it to the weekend of July 25th and 26th. Is that what you wanted, Mr. Superintendent?
Yes, July 25th and 26th, please.
Second,
So would the 25th be the date, and then the 26th is sort of a backup date, or do you need
I
both
think
dates?
that would be the date. We would need to use both of those days to make sure we do all 4 high schools.
Okay. And then we'll work out a time. We don't need a time right now, right?
No, we'd work that out.
Okay, great. All right. July 25th and 26th for a virtual graduation.
All right. So we have a motion by Mr. Minicello, seconded by Mr. Sullivan. I'll call the roll. The mayor and chair, Mayor Sullivan,
Yes.
and myself, I'm a yes. And Miss Asak,
Yes.
Mrs. Mendez,
Yes.
Mr. Minicello.
Yes to my own motion.
You're a little odd if you voted against yourself.
No, wouldn't that be funny?
And Mr. Rodriguez,
yes.
Mrs. Sullivan,
Yes.
and Mr. Sullivan,
Yes.
and the superintendent, even though you're non-voting.
Yes.
All right. Motion carries unanimously. All right. All right, so superintendent, did you want to go ahead with item number 2, the modified competency determination for class of 2020?
Yes, so I'll have Dr. Murray and Ethan Cancell is going to probably jump in, as well as Jim Cobbs. There's a Zoom meeting this Friday with the Department of Education to really go over the details about the competency determination, meaning that obviously with the closure and the limited number of retests that students were unable to take to obviously pass MCAS to receive their diploma, and I'm talking about seniors. They've put some things into place that we can apply for waivers, and I'll let Dr. Murray and Ethan and Dr. Cobbs jump in and explain that process, and we'll learn more about it on Friday with the virtual meeting with the DESE. But right now we do have a memo that came out from the Department of Ed. So I'll let Dr. Murray and Dr. Cobbs and Ethan talk about that.
All right.
Well, okay, so the Brockton High typically does a waiver protocol as a matter of practice anyway. That protocol usually begins at the end of April, the beginning of May. Then it's essentially a review of the students who may have not been successful taking the MCAS, and there's a regular formula, a format that is followed to ensure that every student has an opportunity to get a high school diploma in the event that they haven't passed MCAS. So that was actually ongoing. The guidelines are fairly restrictive, or they have been in the past, and we'd identified the students that we felt we would be trying to appeal for. We got some new guidance on Friday, which has kind of changed the scenario a little bit with regards to students who could be possibly waived if we can find coursework that they passed that would meet the requirements of, for instance, the science or chemistry test, the ELA. So we have decided to revisit all of our students that we initially looked at to make sure that we check their transcripts for that kind of coursework that might actually fit this new standard for this year. And then we'll get more guidance Friday about particulars. So we have approximately 7 to 10 students that we knew were in that appeal situation to begin with. We had kind of whittled that down using the old standard. We're going to bring all of those students back into the conversation and review their transcripts yet again after the guidance on Friday. That's basically it. It's not new, the waiver process. The rules changing a little bit this year to be a little more accommodating could in fact be very helpful for some of our seniors.
Okay. Sounds like we'll have a little more information Friday on the specifics.
Correct.
Right.
So for Edison Academy, anybody have questions for Dr. Murray? So for Edison Academy, we're looking at potentially 154 students that are in various stages of, they would have possibly either completed the MCAS by the summer or completed their coursework. A lot of students at Edison Academy typically retest several times in order to pass, and many, when they graduate, they end up with a certificate and then they come back to take the test. So we have some of those students that had technically graduated but came back to take the test, but because of COVID missed the test cycle. So we have very different stages. We typically do not do appeals for students, and they just test and retest until they pass at Edison Academy. So, with that said, we have some 24 January graduates, 62 graduates that returned just to take the MCAS test and possibly missed it. We have 54 potential June grads when this semester ends. We have 4 potential July grads, and then we have, again, about 10 students that missed the 10th grade MCAS that would have completed all their classwork, but didn't get a chance to take the MCAS. So we're in various stages for Edison Academy as students, but it looks like about 154 potential students. So with this new waiver process, many of them are, are considered seniors and are taking classes, or have taken classes that would, I think, meet the competency determination requirements. So, when that time comes, we'll file those appeals for those students, and hopefully they'll be successful for the MCAS this year.
Okay. Any questions from any of the members of the committee? None? All right. And Superintendent, was there anything else on this matter? I can't hear you.
I'm sorry, it's muted. We will, so when we get more information on Friday, we'll share that with you probably at next Tuesday's, I'll have it on next Tuesday's school committee agenda to update you on that.
Okay, very good. All right, so do we want to go forward then? Let's go to the next item on the agenda, virtual kindergarten registration.
Yep, so we have Marcia Andrade Serpa, the director of our Parent Information Center, and she's going to give you an update on how our virtual registration for our kindergartens are going.
Hello, how are you all? I
Good,
hope
how are
you
you?
and your families are doing well. Before I begin, I'd just like to commend the mayor and certainly the superintendent for all of your hard work during this really challenging time for our families. So from all the technology that was sent out to our students, and that was all of you, the lunches and such that were sent out. I think it's such an important time for our community really gather together. So thank you for your leadership.
Thank you.
So I am going to just share with you the kindergarten process so far. Earlier in March, we created an online pre-registration form. And the process began in mid-March, and it includes the following steps. Parents have a link that they can access on our website, the Brockton Public Schools website, the registration tab. It's also available to families on the Brockton Public Schools Facebook page. I know it's been shared on social media, but there's a link that families can access, and it is the first part of the registration process where they can complete the pre-registration, as we call it, from the comfort of their own home and at any time. It's available 24/7. Once, so the parents are able to go through the form, complete the information, and the form to complete is taking on average about 45 minutes for families. And the form is available in all of our major languages, Portuguese, Spanish, French, and English. And families are able to complete that part of the form once they once it's received by my office, which is immediately after its completion. The families receive a follow-up email requesting information or required documents such as birth certificate, their photo ID, proof of residency, and medical records such as the immunizations and physical exam for the students. Parents are asked to submit those documents in one of three ways. They can email the mas@bpsma.org. That's all listed on our website. They can send a text message. Many parents are electing to take pictures and text it to our office, and that phone number is also on our website. Or they can send it to a fax number, our 508-580-7956. That fortunately comes to us via email, so we're able to access those documents. So once those documents are received from our office, we then connect them with a registration staff member who will contact a parent by any means necessary, whether it's Zoom, FaceTime, WhatsApp. They're communicating with them. They're doing a video meeting so that we can confirm that the parent is indeed the same person on the photo ID that's been submitted. And it's an exciting time. These are challenging times, but many of our families, this is their first child going off to kindergarten. So when they are, they're excited, our registration specialist is sort of walking them through the process, confirming details, helping them make school choices, and also informing them about programs such as our dual language classrooms. So that's all happening, and that's happening virtually, and my team is working really hard to connect with our families. And we, again, have staff that communicate in our major languages. Once all of that is completed, we then move forward and hold the file. A challenge right now, as you can imagine, is many of our pediatric offices are closed or not doing immunizations at this time or not completing physical exams. So that's holding us up a little bit, but we're pressing on and talk to like Brockton Neighborhood Health, for example, and they did share that as soon as things as soon as the order from the state frees up, they're planning to prioritize our students so that way we can get these files complete. Right now, As of yesterday, we had 508 families complete the online pre-registration form for students entering kindergarten this fall. Currently, we have about 225 completed forms. So our office is working hard to make sure that is happening. So that's where we are with kindergarten. And typically we expect about 1,100 students. So we're halfway there in the pre-registration.
Great.
Any questions?
Yeah, how soon after the registration form does the email usually go out?
So once the parent completes the form, I'm actually the one sending out the email. So that comes out within hours. I've some parents completing the form at midnight. So when I wake up the next morning, I get that list and I send out an email. And then again, that email is asking parents to submit their documents. That's what's kind of taking some time for some families.
Right. Right. Okay. All right. Well, I'll say that I used the form.
I
I found it. Well, that's why I think your email may have gone into spam. That's why I was like, should I have gotten that already?
Oh, you did?
Uh-oh. All right. Yeah, I gotta find it. But more
Resend
importantly,
me.
I wanted to let people know that the form is very easy to fill out. I don't think it took me 40. I know you said 45 minutes. I don't think it took me even close to that. It really was pretty easy to do, and you know, pretty well set up, guided you right through. You know, so I like I said, I think you guys did a nice job setting that up.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Marcia, those numbers typical, or is there a little bit of a lag because of the online nature due to the pandemic?
Well, what happened was I think it was that Thursday and Friday, March 12th was when we were closed, right? Our kindergarten window was to start that following Monday, where we would have had hundreds of parents coming in. So my office got virtual, I guess, our remote access to all our documents and such mid-April, and that's when we started. So we're about a month behind. So we're hoping that we will get as many registrations as possible completed by June 15th. We plan on having our dual language lottery on July 7th.
So last year's number for kindergarten at the start in the start of school was about what, 1,100, 1,200?
I think we're around 1,100.
It'll just be interesting to see what the number is, you know, and to see if this has any type of a, you know, a chilling or slowdown, so to speak, of our number. So.
All right. I mean, there's a lot of uncertainty for families and situations. So yes, that could certainly be a factor.
Thank you.
Any other questions with respect to kindergarten? Okay. Your next item, I think, is grade 6. Is that right, Mike?
Yes, it is.
Yeah,
That's
you can
correct.
go on to the, if there's no more questions, Mr. DiAugustino, Marcy is here to also talk about the grade 6 placements, which we always do this time of year. So I'll wait to you to move us on to the next agenda item.
Thank you.
All right. So anybody have any kindergarten questions before we move on? All right. Looks like we don't. So the floor is yours. Let's hear about kindergarten. I mean, yeah, grade 6.
Okay, so we're looking at grade 6 assignments. Obviously, due to the closure of North Middle School, we are assigning our 6th graders again this year, and our assignment letters are expected to go out to families on May 26th. We are looking at numbers for grade 6. Superintendent Thomas, is that something, do they have in front of them, or would you like me to share that at this time?
No, we're pretty much the numbers are pretty much flat with the number of 8th graders leaving. Some schools may be up 20 students, but Marcia and Dr. Murray have worked hard to even out these numbers. We still have some special ed students to place.
That's
So
right.
we can't finalize the numbers yet at each. So, but we're looking at some schools will stay flat because they have less, more 8th graders leaving than 6th graders
Correct.
coming in. A few of the schools, the larger schools like the Plouffe and West might pick up an extra 20 students or so. But we obviously look at the size of the school and how much the schools can absorb. So I think right now with the numbers, we're in really good shape. And we'll finish the special ed placements and again, to continue to even out those numbers to make sure that, obviously that a school doesn't, like a middle school can't go up 100 students
No,
for what they had the year before. So we'll look, obviously, those numbers are pretty level with only a few additions here and there. We'll continue to work on that.
All right. Go ahead.
any questions?
So just to remind everybody that when the letters go out, there, we used to, obviously there used to be a different process, but when the closing of North is basically, we put you pretty much in your neighborhood school, unless obviously you have to attend a special program through special ed or bilingual. Other than that, your middle school, your neighborhood middle school is where you go. And also you have TAG at the Plouffe where you do have students that, come from all over the city. So other than TAG, some bilingual programs and some special ed programs, middle school students do go to their neighborhood school. And that's how we'll stick with it. And we took away the choice for middle school once we closed North. So the assignment is the assignment. There is opportunities to appeal for special circumstances to Dr. Murray. That's usually a very smooth process. And over the last, when we started phasing out North 2 years ago, this selection process has actually gone very well. I should say placement process has gone very well.
Excellent. Any other questions or comments from the rest of the committee? All right. Well, thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Thank you so much. Be
Thank you,
safe.
Marcia.
Thank you.
What your team are doing. Okay, we'll move on to item number 5, TAG 2020-2021.
Yeah, so I'm going to have Ethan and June jump in and explain the selection process for TAG. Obviously, it's going to be a little different this year because we weren't able to complete the full process of how students get into TAG. So I'll let Ethan and June update you on the process we'll follow due to the closing.
Ethan, did you want to start just talking about how we're looking at the assessments that we're using for this incoming TAG class?
Sure. So good evening, everyone.
Good evening, Ethan. Do you have a joke tonight?
I do have a bad joke for you. And it's a math related bad joke. So
We're up for it.
okay, this is a bad one. Why did the math book look so sad?
It just didn't add up.
Close, because it had a lot of really tough problems.
How does a dog stop a video?
How?
He uses his paws.
Oh, geez.
That was equally bad, Mr. Minicello.
Oh
Thank
my
you.
God.
Well, yeah, it's got to go both ways.
Exactly. So in
Almost
terms of
competing now for who can tell the worst jokes here.
yeah, I think I tell the worst jokes in the worst way, but here we go with TAG. It's difficult this year because we usually have STAR results, COGAT results, and then TAG in person for those students who, based on the STAR and the COGAT, test into the in-person opportunity. and then their teacher recommendations. This year, because of the shutdown, the closure, we ended up only having the star results. So we have 2 star results. And again, we of course will have teacher recommendations, and that's going to be very important this year. So what we're planning on doing, and I'm just, in the process of starting this, this whole selection process. I took all the star scores, and those are English language arts and math. And STAR is made by Renaissance. It's our nationally normed sort of external benchmark. And so what I did was I took the winter and the fall benchmarks that we take, and I took the highest score, whichever test was the highest score for ELA and whichever was the highest for math. And I added those up. This is what we usually do, by the way, with STAR. And we slightly weight the math. It's just a little bit, it gets a little more emphasis than ELA, because we found over the years that students can really struggle with math at the as the grade level picks up. So 5th grade, 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade. So we want to make sure that math plays a slightly, not much, slightly bigger role. So once we have that list, which we have, I took a look at the list and we rank order them. And then I have a preliminary, and that it is a preliminary ranking. It is not final. It's a preliminary ranking, and I send it to the principals, and I've already done this. And now the principals will be meeting with the teachers of the 3rd grade students to review the list, to review who's ranked where, and to include those students who, for whatever reason, the teachers believe that they should be on the list. And then one part of the process will be a justification, and that's where we're going. I will then have a meeting with every principal. This is different from years past, but we have to do this because we don't have the test data. I'll be meeting with each principal and possibly teachers or not, but definitely with each principal to review every child at their school, every 3rd grader who, they either was named in that initial listing or was one of the students who might be added by a recommendation. And we'll, take notes on that, and then we'll have a final listing, and the chief academic officer and I will get together. We will review the final list. Generally speaking, I can tell you there are places that are sort of natural cut points. It just works out that way in the distribution of things. So we will be looking that way for it. And so it's a different process, and it's one that we're trying to do the best we can with it. I can tell you, before I sent out the list, I subject the list to multiple analyses. And in terms of boys and girls, it's almost a perfectly even split. In terms of racial ethnic background, there is not the wild disproportionality that afflict schools like in Boston and in New York City and other places. So in that sense, on the face of it, it looks okay. It is not perfect, it never is, but we're really going to rely on teacher input and their expert knowledge, and they really have deep knowledge of the students to supplement the 2 tests that we do have.
And so just to echo what Ethan's saying, I think something that has been a conversation that we've had that's really important is that we really are relying quite a bit on teacher recommendations for this year. As you know, we give the STAR assessment in the fall, in the winter, and the spring, and so obviously we haven't given it 3 times, but regardless, we do use the second administration of STAR as one way of assessing students for the TAG program. So that's still in line with what we normally do. The one missing piece, I know that Dr. Cancell already mentioned this, is that we don't have that COGAT piece, and we also don't have that opportunity for the students to actually go and have that sort of day where they sit down with some of the teachers from the program and have an opportunity to interview in person. And so because of that, and recognizing that this isn't a typical year, one of the things that the superintendent wanted us to put into place was an opportunity for parents in the event that they do have questions, and they will have an opportunity to submit an appeal, and that appeal will go in through my office. And we're in the process of putting just a really small committee together that would include another member of myself, a member of the Office of Learning and Teaching, certainly Dr. Cancell, and the principal of the Angelo School, in order to be able to really look at some factors that maybe we can't see even through teacher recommendation or through the STAR assessment itself. And as we know, parents, we want to allow parents to tell who their child is beyond what may have been used to make an eligibility determination for the TAG program. So just creating that process for them, I think will go a long way in sort of alleviating some of the anxiety that a parent who may have thought that their child would have been eligible and didn't get that invite. They will have some process that they'll be able to follow so that we can address that as a school district. Ethan, do you have anything else?
No, I do want to thank you very much for pointing out the appeal process. We think that that's really important this year, especially. I don't know if the superintendent wanted to add anything about, anything else about the
I
program.
mean, we don't typically have these kind of issues, but in anticipation, again, things look very different this year. So we're putting in a new process.
That's why the appeal process is so important during the closure, that people need to have the right to appeal to the chief academic officer. And so if a student does not get into TAG, the parent can appeal that to June, and then we'll work with the parent to make the best decision as possible. But that we felt very strongly that catch-all had to be in there because we have a new system, and so we needed that option for people to appeal.
What's the 6th grade number?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
So what is the 6th grade number for entries to the program?
You mean the 5th grade? No, I'm sorry, Tony, you mean the 4th grade?
Yes, I'm sorry. The 4th grade.
How many students get into the program? We tried, okay, I finally understand it with Zoom and everything else. In terms of the, we try to reflect the number of the district. So if class size in the district is 25, there are 3 classes at the Angelo, it's 75. If it's 30, it's 30. I can be honest with you. Typically the TAG class is a little bit larger because it's highly sought after, and that's just the way we run it. But that's generally, we try to make it reflect the district class size.
So Tom, just right now we have 73 students in our grade 4 TAG program.
Okay.
And we have 82 in our grade 5 program. So I think it also depends on if the kids accept the seats, and then we have kids who move. So it does fluctuate a bit over time.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Is the TAG process usually done at this time of year? Or are we behind the dates that we usually do it? Is it usually done at this time during the
It's-
year or because of the virus?
The
Everything
only
is a
thing that we're
little bit
missing
off.
is we didn't give the, yeah, it's a little bit off. We have given the call gap by now. So we're a little bit behind.
And the parents usually know by a certain date?
There
Yes,
isn't
and
go ahead, Ethan.
the parent, we should be able to let the parents know at roughly the same time, because parents like to make, it's a big decision. You're going to be pulling your child possibly from their neighborhood school to attend the Angelo. So you need to think that thing through. And so we try to give them the time, and then the Angelo does a nice orientation, and sort of like an open house that tells you about the program, and that's for parents. And then then people make their decisions. So it helps to have Marcia, former principal of the Angelo, now at the Parent Information Center, to help facilitate this.
Right. So parents usually know around what time of the year?
Right around now.
Right around now? Okay. Because I was just asking because there has been some questions from some parents
Yep.
that they haven't heard. So I was just wanted to make sure I was updated on the time. Thank you.
Yeah, and it's about now. We're not exactly on schedule, but I'm hoping that we'll be able to move through this fairly rapidly.
Yes, so
So they should be
Judy, we'll probably be
They should
about
be
2 weeks.
patient.
Yeah, we should probably, it's probably going to be about 2 weeks later than it normally is.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other comment or question on this matter? Did I hear somebody? No? Okay. All right. If there's no further comment on this matter, then we will move to our final item for the evening. And that is other business. Is there any other business to come before the policy subcommittee?
Mr. Vice Chairman,
Yes.
I want to thank the superintendent of schools and Kim Gibson and the BEA. As you know, John McGarry was the Board of Health officer and really worked yeoman's hours, 40-year registered nurse in the city of Brockton, former department head and elected official. John, after many hours and dedicated service, needed to step away. And so thankfully, Linda Cahill, and you all know Linda, I'm sure, 36 years, registered nurse. She has a master's and a doctorate in nursing, 18 years employee of Brockton Public Schools. Last 8 years, she's been director of school nurses for Brockton Public Schools. So she, along with 7 other Brockton Public School nurses, have been helping the efforts of the Board of Health during the pandemic. And in order to avoid really taking steps in the wrong direction, Linda has stepped up and taken the interim executive health officer for the Board of Health role. And I do want to publicly thank the BEA because, of course, we know the nurses are part of the union, and Kim in her role and Mike Thomas in his role work diligently to assist the city. And that just shows how wonderful collaboration cities and schools work. So she's hit the ground running. She's really made an impact already. I sat in on a lot of Zoom calls with different hospitals and the DPH and stuff. So I just wanted to publicly thank the superintendent and everybody on the school side, and specifically Kim Gibson in the BEA for the efforts. It's making a big difference in saving lives. Thank you.
Great. No, I'm glad that we have her and we're able to have her step up and now help many more people within the city. So it's excellent. All right. Any other business?
Just have one thing.
Yes, Mrs.
I just have
Sullivan.
one thing.
Go
I
ahead.
just wanted to update my school committee. I just wanted to update my school committee members on the adult education. As Superintendent Thomas said last week, the part-time on the adult education was shut down, but the full-time was working remotely. So as of, I think pretty soon, we got an update that the state will allow us to open up for the part-time. So they will also be working remotely for adult education and finishing out their programs.
Excellent, excellent. All right, thank you, Mrs. Sullivan.
You're welcome.
All right, did anybody else have anything?
Mr.
Okay,
Vice Chairman, I just had one follow-up if I could.
Sure.
We lost Mayor Cal Pitaro to COVID last week, and Mayor Pitaro was a former chairman of the school committee. He was also an employee of the Brockton Public Schools as a guidance counselor for many, many years, and just a true gentleman. And he passed away, and our thoughts and prayers go out to his family. And if anybody happens to be around tomorrow, David Russell from Russell Pika will be actually driving the hearse procession with the late mayor past City Hall at noontime on the School Street side of the building. I will be there. We're going to be wearing masks. We're going to be doing the social physical distancing, but it's a tribute to a true gentleman and a great public servant. And I just wanted to share that with my fellow elected officials. Thank you.
excellent. Thank you for sharing that. And obviously our thoughts are with Mayor Pitaro and his family. So, all right, I have one item I'd like to bring up that quite honestly, this really isn't a policy subcommittee topic, but we are all together since it's a committee of the whole. We are, and I didn't want to call a superintendent contract committee just for this one, what I think is pretty brief thing. We're way past due on doing a superintendent review for obvious reasons. You know, that wasn't the right time to do it back in March when all of this was really firing up. Do we want to toss around a time when we're going to get back to that? I was thinking maybe, you know, get into July and then we could do that. Does that, anybody have any thoughts on that, or does that seem all right to you know, decide that, you know, in July we'll get to that?
Is there a time on it? Do we have to do it by a certain time?
No, I checked with Mask on that, and it is between the superintendent and the committee.
Oh,
Yeah, I thought that, again, I kind of randomly thought of it, to be honest with you, and was concerned. So I reached out and you know, again, it was one of those, oh geez, did we miss this? And is this a problem? And they responded back and said, it's really between us and the superintendent as to when that happens. You know, but I did want to bring it up. I know it's not really a policy issue, but we are all together since this is a committee of the whole. You know, is any thoughts on maybe making that an item that we would, you know, work on during the month of July, so that we can make sure we get that handled. And, you know, that's something that we do need to make sure happens.
So Vice Chairman, if I can, I think it would be the best course.
Terms in the contract.
What's that? I'm sorry,
Aren't
Mayor
the terms
Sullivan,
of that
you
in the
started.
superintendent's contract?
Is it in the contract when we have to do it?
I believe so.
Is that what you're asking? Yeah, I believe it is. And I know normally we would have done that by now.
Yeah, so
I don't have that
basically
contract.
what we would need to do is to just sign an agreement between the superintendent and the school committee to delay it for, you know, whatever number of months.
Yeah. All right. So we probably should then. So I guess all right, maybe Mike, you and I can talk and separately, and we can get that done and bring it to the committee, and we'll call a superintendent contract committee to, you know, present that. Mayor.
Yeah, I echo the sentiments. I mean, I think in light of the COVID, I mean, Mike and I and Aldo and Troy Clarkson, we were on a call with the delegation today. Our main focus right now is the budget or lack thereof. So I really think best course of action, and out of abundance of really what we need to do right now, it would be the best course would be to push it off. Mike has his hands full. He's been a superstar, great partner working on this with me. And I'll be very blunt about that. But right now, we need to try to figure out how the city side and school side is going to move. That should be the focus right now. And I just want to thank Aldo and Mike and Troy Clarkson, because we really don't have any guidance right now. I was on a call for an hour and a half with Governor Baker the other night, and tomorrow night with the Senate President. So I think, Vice Chairman, I think that's a really good thing if we could just push it off, because our main focus right now is, of course, the virtual graduation, making sure that the virtual learning continues, and then ultimately figure out the next fiscal year. Thank you.
All right. Mike, why don't I reach out to you and we'll just figure out when you're comfortable doing it. I mean, like I said, I know it seems like a silly detail, but it is something that contractually we do have to do at some point. And I think Mr. Minicello's point is right, that at this point, we probably need to have some kind of a papered agreement to delay it to whenever, whenever we are ready to do it. So I don't want to get into November and we won't have done it yet, So at any rate, all right. So we'll leave that
So,
for
and
now.
it's-
I'll talk
and-
to Mike and we'll take that.
And it's more, and Mr.
Just consult with Kevin Bresnahan.
can
he'll
everybody
put it
still hear
together
me?
for you.
Yeah, can everybody still hear me?
All right.
Can you hear
Yeah,
me,
go ahead.
Mr. DiAugustino?
Yes.
No, and it's actually something, that's because I'm a new superintendent, it is a requirement of the Department of Education. And this is it's not about the contract, it's actually about the evaluation and the rating you give me. That's important for, for the Department of Ed, and obviously somebody like me that has to get recertified every 5 years. So it's more about this is more focused on the evaluation that each member gives me. And Mr. Minicello's right. What we can do is we can have Kevin Bresnahan craft the language around that, so it covers, the Department of Ed guidelines towards superintendent evaluations.
Okay, so all right. I'll reach out to you and Kevin both tomorrow and we'll figure this out, and then we'll call a contract subcommittee to formalize whatever it is we need to do. Like I said, I just know it's something that we can't just push it off and not either, make the proper extension. That's all. I just want to make sure we do however long we extend it, we just got to do it right. So, okay. Any other business for this
Absolutely.
subcommittee this evening? If there's no other business, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to
Anybody?
adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Go on.
Second.
Do we have a second? All right, so we have a motion to adjourn by Mrs. Sullivan, properly seconded, I believe, by Mayor Sullivan. And so I will call the roll. Okay. And so for the Mr. Sullivan, Mayor Sullivan.
Yes.
Yes, okay. And myself, I'm a yes. Ms. Asak.
Yes.
Motion to adjourn, Ms. Asak. Yes. All right. Ms. Mendez.
Yes.
All right. Mr. Minicello.
Yes.
Mr. Rodriguez.
Yes.
All right. And Mrs. Sullivan.
Yes.
Mrs. Yes, okay. And Mr. Sullivan.
Yes.
Tim,
Yes.
thank you. And Mr. Superintendent Thomas.
Yes.
Superintendent, yes.
He doesn't
Okay.
get a vote.
All right.
Yes. Yes.
I know. He's non-voting, but we've been giving him one anyway. All right, we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody, for your time tonight.